Hey there, listeners, and welcome to Film Jart Reviews The Hustle, featuring the lovely Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson, who, in this movie, both play con women. One wealthy and sophisticated, and the other, well, not so much. But both use their respective skills to con men out of money or jewels. Pretty simple premise. And the movie starts with a strong introduction of how these women do essentially the same thing, conning people, but differently, of course. It's funny, it's a great opening, it builds everything you pretty much need to know about the following characters. Well, everything and all you need to know, but I'll kind of get to that later. In its own natural way, the story crosses the two characters together, and the comedy dynamic between them really begins and hits off. We get this long single bit of Hathaway's character teaching Wilson, which is really just a physical comedy bit of Rebel Wilson that is in fact enjoyable. But that bit eventually just ends, and it cuts to the end of the training sequence, and really that's all we get of training. There's not a whole lot as I was hoping. I feel they really could have gotten inventive with the training sequence of everything, and we could have got more character building within that, and the film just uses it to move on. Yeah, let me explain. After the training bit, the movie jumps into a semi-longer bit that the characters call The Lord of the Rings. I don't want to spoil the entire joke, but essentially the girls use the same oddball physical joke and bit multiple times to acquire a set of expensive rings. The whole sequence kind of undermines the previous training scene and also runs a tad too long. The end of it all puts the two characters at odds with each other, which leads into what we get at the last half of this film. If you saw the movie trailer, which I assume you must have, otherwise, why do you really check reviews? In the trailer, they show a bit of Rebel Wilson playing a blind woman to undercut Hathaway and play a con of sympathy to get close to a target. Well, that bit, seen in the trailer, follows and is basically the whole last half of the film. It gets a few chuckles, but runs very long, and this is a movie that's only 90 minutes long, which is standard for a comedy or most big screen films, but using half of your time on one bit, it really starts to cut in and drag. Not to say that it doesn't earn its chuckles, but as a viewer, you kind of want more story and you want to see the scene eventually progress. And you don't really get that because they take this one bit and they'll use it in multiple points and areas, but it's still just them running with Rebel Wilson being blind as they're conning a target. Eventually, Rebel falls in love with said target that they're conning and decides to call the whole thing off, which I guess is the closest thing to a character arc that the film gives us, but it's then undermined about 5 minutes later in a different scene that I don't want to spoil in case you still decide or want to go see the film eventually. The movie does leave itself an opening for a possible sequel, but not one that I feel is earned or that I really care to see. The performances in the movie are great. Rebel leads with all the jokes and physical humor, while Anne Hathaway just plays to her for the comedy. Think of it as one character is the setup, the other one's a punchline, except for Rebel can sometimes just be setup and punchline altogether. Actor Alex Sharp, who plays the target for the last half of the film, really just sells himself as this kind, average Joe character, and the actresses bounce off of him with their comedy so well that although you do enjoy a lot of their scenes together, they're always running the same kind of bit in those scenes that it's very repetitive and kind of loses its enjoyment as the film comes to its end. But overall, the chemistry is great. I think it really came down to the writing of the film, where it was just so simple that it comes off also really lazy, and it's kind of a disappointment as for a comedy. Now, I'm not saying that the film is downright awful. I did laugh, which is important, of course, for a comedy. But it's a movie I can't really recommend people to spend their money and time watching, in theaters at least. And if you do watch it, I would have to say wait till it comes out and watch it at home, and probably with a good friends and some wine to really get the most out of it. Anyways, that's kind of all about it. The film being so simple and all, there really wasn't too much more to say other than it has its moments, but ultimately just falls flat. And I'd have to say that's really my full review of The Hustle. Quick plugs, of course, since this is the end of the video. You guys can now follow me at FilmJot or on Instagram at film_jot. And I believe Facebook's finally working for me, but it's not under FilmJot per se, it's under Jot H Plata. But the logo still comes up, so that's the one to click on. And also, since this movie did come out in time for Mother's Day, I want to shout out to my mom, who is great and the absolute best. Hopefully I get this posted in time to actually leave and spend the day with you, and then painfully show you how to listen to this later. Anyways, thanks again to anyone who's listening and still listening on my review. And until next time, this is FilmJot. See you later, you guys.